And we are live. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for the VC talk on consumer space. I'm Greg. I'm from Terminal 4, and Terminal 4 is an ecosystem that basically unites startups, investors, and big tech players globally. And this event is happening on the way to our closest program, which is Traction Builder, Consumer Tech Accelerator, that we're doing together with a snapshot. And very soon, very soon, 15 selected C to Series A B2C startups. We're gonna provide them with like 30K in up to 30K in snapshot credits, mentorship from Flow, Revolut, Uber, Spotify, and gather them all in Paris for final event where all the consumer funds coming together, have fun at a party and a pitch. And if it's something that sounds like a fit for you, make sure to go to the description of this event, check out the details, and apply by March 26th. So, enough from me, and let's make it happen. So I would start with the words that already have been said in the promo text, but I just want to repeat that very few investors back consumer companies, even fewer, I would say, know how to scale them. So today I'm thrilled to moderate this insightful and meaningful talk on how to grow B2C startups from C to Series A and further, of course, in 2025. And I'm glad to have such an amazing company with me here. Please welcome Singh, venture partner at Speedinvest, Emily Bennett, principal at All Ventures, Rok Zorko, general partner at Silicon Gardens Fund, and Michal Csonga, general partner at 0100 VC. So, guys, I think I very want to thank you for joining us today. I'm looking forward to start. But before that, let's just make a quick intro. I would say you know better to tell about yourself. So, like 30 seconds each. Samir, let's start with you.
Hey guys, hey Greg, thanks for having me on. This should be fun. As you mentioned, I'm a venture partner at Speedinvest. Generally tend to be a network effects nerd. Tend to write a little bit about it, teach a course on Reforge about it. Tend to invest in companies that have them. So social, marketplace, consumer, and generally fairly hands-on as an investor. Tend to get involved with product metrics, organic growth, anything that network effects touch. And typically I'm investing at pre-seed and seed predominantly into European founders, but occasionally might look beyond that as well. Yeah, that's
Amazing.
me.
Happy to have you here. Emily, please.
Hi, great to meet everybody. Thank you so much for having me. I'm Emily, an investor at Al Ventures. Al is the leading edtech venture capital firm. We invest in the range of education, everything from standard applications of early learning, K-12 through lifelong learning, as well as extension into adjacent categories that also have learning as a core competency, like fintech and healthcare. We are investing out of our fifth fund now, have 2.2 billion in AUM, and invest as a lead investor in everything from kind of inception, seed phase, up through Series C. And by background, previously I was an operator, but was in product for a number of years at Meta, was PM of video at the New York Times, and then was on the creator team over at Spotify. So lots of a consumer experience, more from the build angle before coming to the investment side.
Awesome. Thank you for joining us today. Rok, your turn.
Hi everyone, nice to meet you. I'm Rok. I was also a co-founder at a consumer startup here in Slovenia called Outfit 7. So we were doing mobile games and apps, and that's what I still do now as an investor. So now I'm with Silicon Gardens, which is a fund out of ex-Yugoslavia, but really backing European founders. And as a partner, I'm mostly in charge of consumer. And that usually for me means apps. So hopefully somebody reaches out.
Indeed. Hope so. And it's gonna happen, of course. Michal, and now you.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Pleasure being here. My name is Michal Michael. Partner is 0100. So we are a VC firm focusing on everything B2C, B2B, so quite agnostic in Eastern Europe and Middle East, so quite geographically focused. Besides investing, we are quite founder focused, so we build a bunch of startup conferences across Europe, investor conferences, co-working places, our own software, etc. So been quite active for the last 11 or 12 years in the entrepreneur space. And before that, I've done also my time in consumer big tech companies as well. So a bit of corporate, bit of startups. Thanks.
Great. Thanks for the intro. And let's, I think, kick off the first round. Yeah. So questions for all of you guys. So let's start maybe at how do you see the state of VC investments in consumer companies now in 2025? Maybe Samir, let's start with you.
I think if I had to summarize it, it's getting better. I think a couple of years ago, people were quite resistant, at least in Europe, to invest in consumer companies, at least at my stage. Increasingly, you're seeing people become more and more open. There've been, I think, a couple of Series A rounds of companies that have done reasonably well that were unfairly maligned at seed, and that has opened a few eyes and opened the checkbooks a bit more so. With the consumer AI, you're seeing like I think a ton of funding moving in. Whether that funding is justified or not at that stage, I don't know yet. But on the whole, I would say it's pointing upwards.
Great. Thank you so much for your answer. Now, Rok, your view.
Yeah, similar to Samir. So also I'm seeing it become better. Maybe just a little anecdote or story. In 2022, I was at Slush in Helsinki, and that was my first time at the conference. And so I was asking every VC I could meet, what do you guys invest in? And VC after VC, it was always B2B SaaS and marketplaces, B2B SaaS and market. So after a while, if I met a VC, I started saying it before he said it. I was like, B2B SaaS. And now it's better. Now I think it's better, but it's still pretty hard. So especially in Europe, like I would strongly echo what Samir said.
Yeah, I feel it. I feel you so much. And by the way, Rock mentioned the later stages of investment. And before the start, we chatted with Emily, and she mentioned that Owl is investing up to Series C and have grown like 8 companies in your portfolio to the unicorn status. I've been wondering what was kind of inflection point in those companies? What was the go-to green flags at the seed stage of, for instance, Masterclass or Quizlet that said to you, for our team, that it's a go?
Yeah, I think sometimes it's hard at seed in the absence of data, and that's inherent in seed, is that you're kind of dealing with nascency. But what you're trying to make a bet on is like in simplest form, is this solving a real problem that's validated by data? And does this entrepreneur feel like he's truly cognizant of the problem space that he is building for he or she? Are you solving a problem that backs into like a really sizable business opportunity? And we've seen both. We've seen kind of niche problem spaces where you can build really interesting lifestyle businesses, but from a VC perspective, where you are betting on outsized outcomes, you need to really see the larger picture. And so being able to spell that vision of kind of expedited track is important. And then from a team perspective, and I think especially at pre-seed and seed, a lot of the bet, because oftentimes we're dealing with early product prototypes and pivots are subsequent, but is this a team that's going to be able to navigate this? Is a team that A, is well positioned for the problem space that they're building in? And usually that's a mix of just both industry understanding as well as technical competency, though I think the barriers for technical competency are going down with some growth around AI. As well as, is this a team that just is like incredibly hungry and scrappy and isn't going to say no? And that latter bucket is actually really important because building a company, which many of us know, is like incredibly hard. And there's going to be so many stopgaps and so many reasons to recoil. And you need to be somebody that is willing to push back that. And those are the successful companies we've seen. I think especially, examples in our portfolio, including Quizlet, Newzella, both massive scaled organizations where we invested very early, we had that sense from the founder of like, I'm going to make this work at all costs. And so that's kind of the composition that we're looking for, at least at seed.
Yeah, I love how my further questions are related to what you just said. For instance, regarding the data and the due diligence process, Samir, you're well-known advocate and ambassador of network effects deals. I want you to define how do you define the network effects companies, and how does your due diligence process looks like in terms of benchmarks and metrics within those companies who've matched this profile?
I mean, the definition of network, there's just one definition of network effects, and I try and stick to that, which is the addition of a user makes the product more valuable. That's the theoretical definition. If you had to translate it into what a real world product looks like, it's typically a product that's enabling a unique, structured multiplayer interaction between two or more users. You can't create a network effect unless the product itself is an interaction between two or more users, right? That's the broad definition. In terms of the due diligence framework, there's like a 4-step process, and the 4th step is the actual metrics. The first is the founder itself, and this is pretty aligned to what Emily mentioned. Is the founder resilient, but also, are they a missionary or a mercenary? Do they care deeply about this problem beyond logical reason and beyond just having to build a company? Is there something deeply personal to them about this problem? That's one thing. That's what keeps people going. In addition to being someone who's resilient and someone who kind of walks through walls, you kind of need to have that driving force. So that's kind of the first filter for me. Second, of course, is what I just mentioned. Is there actually a unique, structured multiplayer interaction here? If you don't have a unique interaction, you're probably fighting against somebody else who has a network effect. You're probably going to lose. Right? That's hard. That's the point of a network effect. If it's not structured, you're probably creating something like a community akin to a Discord group or a WhatsApp group. It's too noisy for a network effect to take hold. And if it's not multiplayer, there is no network effect there, period. Third step is, does that interaction have the properties of something that is going to be uniquely defensible and scalable? There's certain traits, depending on the type of network it is, that lead to those types of outcomes. And finally, are there early signals, behavioral signals, to suggest that the interaction is working? And that's where metrics come in. I generally kind of segregate it into 3 different ones, and I prioritize them as engagement first, retention second, acquisition third. It's okay to have engagement and not the other 2 at the stage I invest in. And what I mean by engagement is, if you have potential for a network effect and the interaction is working, you would see users become more engaged over time and newer cohorts be more engaged than previous cohorts. So in a very simple example, if this is, let's say, a Snapchat, the core interaction there is sending a snap or viewing a picture. Is the number of snaps sent and viewed per user going up over time? Like, that's the first signal you will have that there is a network effect kicking in here. Like, that's the one thing I am looking for at this stage. Typically with a sample size of, if it's a social product, couple of thousand active users, that's where the sample size becomes meaningful to start looking at some of the data. If it's a marketplace, maybe 50 to 100 monthly transactions. Then on the retention side, rather than, you kind of want a flat retention curve, but you might not have enough data early on. So more important than that is, are cohorts getting more retentive over time? Again, the same signal of our network effects kicking in. And finally, is there real meaningful potential for organic growth here? Is the word of mouth coefficient at 0.5 plus? Do you have a reasonable K factor depending on the product between 0.2 to, if it's 0.5 plus, fantastic at this stage, but really, if you're super early, even if you have something around 0.2, that's good. But that is the lowest priority to me in terms of acquisition. If you have the loops to actually make that work and you have engagement really scaling, like, that's when you might be onto something meaningful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do really enjoy talking about network effects with you since our first call. And for everyone here at the panel, I'm sharing with you the basically library of Samir of network effects. And go to his LinkedIn and to Breadcrumb VC and check out the materials. It's definitely worth checking out and reading more precisely. And thanks for sharing, Samir. Um, Rok, speaking of unicorns, we've already mentioned that word. You with your co-founders built an Outfit 7. Talking Tom is a legendary product and first Slovenian unicorn. Uh, as a guy sitting in Kiev and the ecosystem originated in Central Eastern Europe, I wanted to ask you about the regional lessons that you've learned from the way of the Outfit 7, and how does it influence your thesis within the Silicon Gardens and your willingness to support the B2C companies?
Yeah, I think, with the dawn of internet and then the iPhone and other smartphones, it was the first time that you could build a global business from pretty much anywhere, and Slovenia is such a small country that uh, building something just for Slovenians, it's not gonna get you very rich, So that's why you kind of have to go global at the start. So that's why we started a B2C thing, and that's why I like seeing B2C startups. There were many lessons, of course, while building Outfit 7. I was the head of product, so you can imagine my lessons were more product related. But the main lesson, I guess the first lesson for me was that distribution is really at least one half of the business. If one half is making a good product and making sure people can use it or like to use it, the second half, equally strong, should be how are you able to effectively distribute this product? And that's also what I usually see when I invest in startups, that if they have a founding team where at least one of the co-founders is focused on distribution, on user acquisition, this way or the other, the startup has much higher chances of success. And vice versa. If they're not focused on distribution, then they usually fail or they stop growing quickly. The other big lesson, so that's one really huge lesson, and I can go into details if anybody has questions. The second big one for me is, are you building something that anybody really wants? And this is still the most, how would I say, the most basic thing, but you would think everybody knew it, but they still don't. So I mostly invest in pre-seed and seed sometimes. And so I'm looking at stuff very early, and the most common mistake I see is people are not being scientific enough or are not using any kind of metrics to measure if anybody really wants this, or doesn't. And so again, I have stories, multiple stories as a builder and then also as an investor of what to do and what not to do. But maybe we can go into this later.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing. I definitely agree with all that, and because it's basically one of the key points on which Attraction Builder is built in: the distribution, the analytics, and of course diversifying this scaling channels. So yeah, but thanks for sharing. So in terms of the thesis and where in which companies you guys invest, Michal, I know that the focus of 0-100s has slightly evolved within the second fund, and you've been more active in the consumer space before. But what's changed in the landscape from your point of view, and how do you approach consumer companies now?
Okay, so I think between our Fund 1 and Fund 2, the thesis on B2C versus B2B didn't change that much, honestly. It's just evolved a bit depending on which sectors and which geographies we look at. We expanded our scope geography-wise, so we have become really active, for example, in Middle East, where also the B2C space is super active. And very lucrative for European companies to expand there as well. So it's we see this basically new expansion geographies, not only going to US, UK, but also to Middle East, and we are trying to help both B2B and B2C companies to expand there with through local partners. But when it comes to our overall look at the B2C, so like first of all, I think number one, I'm going to be echoing a few things that were mentioned already, but number one thing is I think it needs to be something like jumping on growing trend, a mega trend of consumer trend. So basically, right now there are areas of hyper personalization, financial inclusion, lifelong learning. Like you can find all these kind of trends which are basically still unexplored and still growing. Even if if you do the rest of the things right, you're gonna hit something there. The other thing is like I'm gonna be echoing on like picking the founders. So yeah, the founders in B2C, like compared to B2B founders, I think what I learned is like they really need to have marketing sixth sense, like, and by marketing I mean both marketing communication and distribution when it comes to B2C. So it's they need to be able to really quickly summarize the wow moment, like why this is basically something unique and something needed by the people, or they really need to be geeky about the channels and the distribution, basically a strategy. Otherwise, basically it's cooked, right? So if they are not really able to communicate it well or distribute it well, it doesn't matter what you're solving. So those are the two factors that we look at, and either the founder or the team needs to have a track record or just absolute obsession about it. So if they don't have it, like that's a very tricky part. And maybe to what Samir mentioned, like I love the breadcrumb VCs. I was quickly looking at it, amazing. Maybe my contrary opinion on traction needed. Honestly, like having like looking at the startups from especially our region, like Eastern Europe and MENA, there is not much difference in the de-risking when it comes to zero traction and maybe a few thousand users. Yes, the data will tell you something, but I think it's more important to look at the quality of the data and where it's coming from. If it's coming from the region, which is the target region of the biggest growth, etc. Because what we see quite a lot is, especially coming B2C startups coming from our region, yes, they can reach the 10,000 users quite quickly. But usually it's CE, it's the super fans, it's the network of the friends, etc. And the data is quite useless to us besides the fact that the valuation just jumped. So that's kind of how we look at it. Is like the traction for the sake of traction is not everything, but we need to look at like what we are trying to actually read from the data.
Yeah, I'm wondering if you have in mind a founder who matches all those green flags that you've mentioned, maybe from your portfolio or just from your network, Michal.
So all of our portfolio, because we pick them, so I'm not going to discriminate between them. But from some of the famous ones that we know, you mentioned that you work with Flow, right, in this acceleration program. I think the team is quite amazing in that as well, and they have really good obsession when it comes to especially the distribution channel, and they have proven model like how to basically spin off and scale new startups, etc. And that's a perfect example, right? Then you are from Ukraine, so Headway guys are doing quite really amazing job there as well. So I think you can find loads of good examples.
Perfect picks, perfect picks. If anyone wants to jump in the mentorship session with Flaw, Headway, and many other stars, apply for Traction Builder, and let's go. So now want to go a bit vertical, and Emily, our ventures has invested across very wide range of ad tech verticals, like from K-12 to workforce upskilling, AI-driven tutoring. Which segments now do you see kind of as the most underinvested or having like the most hidden untapped potential today?
Yeah, I think before answering that specifically, it's important to back out and just think about the state of the broader industry because I think it's a momentous period of time. Like AI has clearly brought a wave of massive change across the industry. It's how businesses think about automating tasks, how consumers think about working with, manipulating information. And it's completely seeded a new pace of innovation, both for incumbents and especially for new entrants that are coming to market at a faster pace than ever before. Um, and what does that mean for new companies? It means that the expectation is that it's easier to build, it's easier to test, it's easier to get access to data. And we've gotten from a model where it takes an engineering team of literally 20 people to sometimes a single person building a really good app in 2 days, leveraging AI, getting it out the door, and being able to really learn and iterate rapidly. So the implications for both entrepreneurs and also for VCs is one, like the standards on rapid and efficient scale are going up. I was actually just talking to a friend in VC about the fact that we've both been pitched multiple companies and passed on multiple companies in the past couple of months that have gotten to 10 million ARR in 10 months. And the fact we never would have done that before. And it's becoming more commonplace, that level of trajectory, but it's also becoming more of an expectation. So it backs into what we're looking for, which is one, companies that are internalizing that. They're internalizing the construct of efficiency. And that might mean raising less capital, which sometimes feel like right now we're seeing the opposite of that, which is an environment where people are raising more to build more efficiently. But I think that will normalize. But we are looking for that as a theme, which is like, do you know how to be scrappy in a market like this? And can you operate with less and prove out like the rapid trajectory of scale, either on revenue or on user growth that we think is justified by this type of market environment? Thematically, I think that extends across all verticals in which we operate. But what we are really looking for is like, where is everyone else not spending time? And so that might not be, we're getting pitched lots and lots of AI tutors, for example, and some of those are really interesting and scalable, but a lot of them are lookalike. But it's disentangling that, saying if a major theme is, for example, AI tutoring, which we think is going to have a clear winner, who's the team to bet on? Who's the team that's operating the most efficiently? Who's the team that's moving most quickly, and has built a product that we think has the real like lasting power in the space? And then beyond that, it's looking for where are the unturned stones, that might be the unsexiest part of the industry where no one's spending time right now, but are really scalable business opportunities. Where I am spending time in that ilk, both on the workforce side, spending a lot of time with digital twin technologies, so thinking about simulated experiences. Can you leverage AI to get insights that help with both strategic planning as well as upskilling? And then on the K-12 side, it could be anything from operating system of how a school actually functions, to how do they find funding, how do they make sense of data, both in the context of K-12 and also in adjacent industries, things which are massive growth like oil and gas, like solar, especially HVAC. We have a couple of companies in the US that are focused there. So always looking for that. It's that combination of how is the team building, as well as have they found something where not everyone else is playing simultaneously.
Yeah, I mean that's very interesting. I've been wondering what's the EdTech app on your phone that you use the most?
The EdTech app on my phone that I use the most, I do use Duolingo quite frequently. I'm married to a man who's half Mexican and half German. And we also just had a baby, so thinking a lot about language diffusion across our house. So that's probably the app that I would use most frequently on the EdTech side. But I am inherently a lifelong learner, and so I'm also kind of constantly seeking new experiences that come to market. And then you might not naturally bundle this under the guise of EdTech for much of the audience, but tools like GPT, like Perplexity, that are seeing growth, those are EdTech companies.
Yeah,
It's an
indeed.
information companies. And so that's becoming kind of ubiquitous to the way that we think about search, that we think about task automation and knowledge acquisition.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for sharing. And Rok, back to you. I've been recently talking with one of our founders at Terminal 4, and he shared how valuable for him was insights that you've shared with him just in due diligence process. And that turned my attention to the question, how do you usually work with your portfolio companies, especially at the seed stage, to help them grow? I mean, you have a pretty great recent example of Bible Chat raising 14 mil Series A. Maybe some cases that scenario.
Yeah, okay, cool. Good question, but I don't think we helped Bible Chat that much, to be honest, because the founders are already that great, you know. So usually when you have repeat founders who's it's not their first rodeo, you can only advise a little bit sometimes. So, but not on the main stuff, they already knew what they had to do. So I think the most valuable advice that at least we do or we give is at between pre-seed and seed, I think. So again, I'll illustrate with a story because maybe a story is the best case scenario. So I had a product manager who worked for me here in Ljubljana, and after he left, he had an idea to build a bird feeder, a smart bird feeder, which I thought was a really stupid idea at the time. But I said, okay, Giga, that's his name. Just, make a test or something, do a test like we did it at Outfit 7, And so he found a co-founder, Franci, who is now the CEO of the business. And we had a call, and I said, I think you should do a test without actually building anything, And so they built a website as if this bird feeder already exists with fake design, and they posted some Facebook ads, so meta ads. I think it was Facebook and Instagram, and they saw that the click-through rate was, I think, 10 times better than the average was of Facebook's at the time. And so I thought, okay, it looks good, So, but I was still not happy. I said, can you also swipe the credit card somehow and then return an error or something, just to see if, because clicking and buying is not the same thing, right? So they did that, and the data was still 10 times better. And that company turned into BirdBuddy, which I think last year was the third year of their existence, and they made, I think, 55 million in revenue. So, growing very fast. It's a hardware business, so it has it has obstacles, obviously. It's also a subscription business, but that's where I think you can provide the most help to a startup. It's at inception usually, or in the beginning. Later on, the help is more indirect, I would say. You can help them maybe with hiring or with strategy of opinions and stuff, but no, it's not in the weeds anymore like I'm used to. So
Yeah, that's really cool. I mean, the Christian from your team, we have shared a lot about BirdBuddy, but I didn't know that the approach you used to help them at the very beginning. That's awesome. I mean, thanks for sharing a lot. And Samir, next question to you is. What would be your advices to consumer startups who are looking to balance, I would say, in terms of sustainable growth, the performance marketing, the retention metrics, building long-term brand, powering the network effects? How do you usually advise them to balance, and what are the best approaches?
I'm like I said, the prioritization is always engagement, retention, acquisition in that order. If you have rapidly increasing per user engagement and network effects that are kicking in, it at least tells you that there's a group of users that's getting value out of it. So even if your retention curve is flattening at a low level, it means that there's something off with your acquisition channels or something off with your comms. Once people get to the aha moment, they seem to be sticking around, product seems to be working the right way. So at that point, it's more tweaking the messaging and tweaking your acquisition channels to getting the retention. Performance marketing, I can't comment on as much. I prefer to stay away from companies that are heavily reliant on performance marketing. Most of my portfolio companies tend to be ones that are naturally a little bit more on the organic side. Either they have inbuilt viral loops, or there's certain types of product value props that just lend themselves well to strong word of mouth. And so to me, that's an outcome of product. Like there's certain types of product value propositions that might apply for. I'll give you one example, right? So Honey, for example, not a network effects product, but in general, a product that makes or saves you money generally will lend itself to strong word of mouth. Alternatively, a product that you are meant to use with your friends will have strong viral loops, because the first thing you do when you get into the product is invite your friends, right? One of my portfolio companies, how about just social calendar? The idea is you can see what your friends are doing. The only way to do that is to get into the app and invite your friends, right? So you've got natural viral loops going in there. So it's a lot of that usually largely is an outcome of product. So a lot of what I tend to focus on is companies that have those natural product extensions. And once you have that value proposition, how do you actually get, if the engagement is there, how do you actually get retention up to a fairly healthy level? What sort of experiments should you be running in onboarding? What sort of experiments are probably big red flags for you to do? So keep an eye out when you're testing for those versus ones that are more likely to be low hanging fruit. So it's a lot of product experimentation on that side.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. Yeah, agreed. Absolutely. Absolutely. By the way, Michal, and by the way, firstly, chat, as we have this call, the Zoom call, feel free to drop questions in the chat. And we're going to have like a couple of minutes at the end to answer some questions. So feel free to ask our panelists and we'll go to it. Like
seed phase up through Series C. My background,
someone's sharing the background.
was in product
Who is that?
at Meta with.
Yeah, all good now. All good. So, Michal, back to you. What would you say is the B2C category that's completely overlooked now, but has a huge potential from your point of view?
Yeah, I think there are a few. So I think fintechs are back, and not so many builders actually. So there were super like when we were looking at our pipeline, it was funny that 2 years ago, 3 years ago, our pipeline was full of fintechs. These days we see less, and I think now it's really the best time to look at B2C fintech because we got proven models and proven basically value concepts. It's not just basically vague proposition on water like this might work in the future. So, and I'm surprised, like maybe it's just us, but we've seen a relative drop in fintechs when it comes to B2C space in our pipeline, and I find it super interesting from our perspective. I think one area which is still not, I think it's never going to be enough saturated. It's still health, B2C health. So I'm not saying it's overlooked, but there is still loads of space to basically figure out new solutions, and the market is just. I don't think it's gonna be declining anytime soon. I think this is one of the trends that's gonna stay here at least for a bit. So that one for sure. I'm personally super bullish on entertainment, and I think people and founders were quite bearish recently. Sorry, entertainment, education. I wanted education. So when it comes to edtechs, so for example, in Eastern Europe, we see almost nothing when it comes to edtech startups. We invested maybe, I think, three of them or something like that. And honestly, we were really trying hard. We were really trying hard to find some and invest in this space because honestly, like it's also when it comes to Eastern Europe, education as per se, like so screwed up that we just want to help it with the technology. So it's also our kind of altruistic reasons to support this space. And I see lots of good stuff, actually, like the models being built, but not so many founders building it. So I think these three areas from my side.
Yeah, fair enough. And yeah, I totally agree. By the way, if anyone wants to add something on this question, I would love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I think we think about underserved both markets as well as verticals. So starting with geography, like for a while, I've talked to lots of VCs who say they will never invest in Africa. We're investors in a company called ULesson, which is growing as the largest education technology company across all of Africa. Why is that interesting? Because if you look at like the curve of technology adoption across the US, markets like Africa are lagging, but they serve massive addressable populations. And so there are inherently less competition there, but also seeds of massive companies that will be generated. It's just a matter of time. So we like taking those early bets. It needs to be the right company, but mapping a space and getting to identify early that this could be a next market leader that couldn't exist in the US just because of competitive penetration. And then in terms of just verticals we're looking at, I mean, everything from simulation-based training, I think, is unbelievably interesting. I talked about digital twin technology. Recently led an investment seed in a company called Schemata that is actually using camera technology. Take a picture of an asset and you can generate 3D rendering in real time and use that for virtual training. That to me is the future of training in a way that's lean, that's infused into the flow of work. As well as in an ecosystem in which AI becomes ubiquitous, becomes the way that we seek information, what are the guardrails that emerge? And so that's everything around authentication, around privacy, especially as it pertains to kid and younger usage. And all of that falls into our doctrine in the lens of Al.
Yeah, absolutely. That's very interesting. Thanks for sharing that. And we are almost at the final round of our panel discussion. And I want to go blitz questions, like 10 seconds answers only. Yeah, and after that, we're going to have just two questions from the chat and wrap it up. So, first, Emily, if you had to start a consumer tech company today, what would it be?
I mentioned I have a 5-month-old baby. So I would start a parenting app that is actually grounded in AI that knows my child, knows her behaviors, and customized guidance. I think there's a lot of generalized parenting help, but something that actually uses machine learning to really cater to me. That would be very helpful right now.
Cool, cool. Thank you for sharing. And I believe something in the market we're gonna emerge in this space very soon. Samir, what's a consumer startups you regret passing on?
I regret passing on. Whew, good question. I mean, I've only been doing this 4 years. I'm relatively young in my investing career. There's a company I missed out on called No Unity in about 2021. So that's one that I would say is a company I would rather have been in. Outside of that, I think it's hard to spot one. Maybe another one. There's a company called Tilt that I saw very early at the pre-seed, pre-launch, which is sort of a whatnot equivalent here in Europe that is also doing very well. I ended up meeting the founders right before they were raising their Series A, and that's potentially another one.
Yep, thanks for sharing. Rok, what's the one thing consumer founders keep pitching VCs and they secretly regret that, secretly hate that?
I'm not sure I understood the question. Sorry.
I was just framed with it word regret because it's such a sensitive question. What's the one thing consumer founders keep pitching that VCs secretly hate?
To be honest, I have no idea. I don't know. I don't.
Maybe what VCs
I
secretly
will,
love.
I'm happy to give one as I think it's important. I think companies early stage keep pitching profitability because they hear from the market that that's what they want to hear. VCs don't want to hear about profitability. Acquirers do. And when you're thinking about growth stage, you definitely do. But in early stage, you should be investing in growth, and top line is what matters. So that I think is important to internalize for early stage founders.
Yeah, thanks for jumping in, Emily. That's a good one. Rok, any thoughts?
Well, they're always surprised when I start asking a lot of, let's say, personal questions in the sense of, what's the relationship between the founders? Questions which I don't think they get questioned a lot. Like everybody is asking them about the vision and so on, but at least based on the reactions, I don't think they get asked this a lot. So this is maybe it's not something I hate. I don't hate this, but if you're starting a startup with a friend or with a colleague, it's usually a long path. You're basically married to that person at work for a while, and it can get pretty rough. I've seen it. I've experienced it personally, and I've also seen it in startups that I've invested in. And so I think thinking about what the starting positions are of everyone, and is everything, how would you say, is everything, does everybody know what the starting positions are, and is the deal solid between the co-founders or not? That's usually when, if it's not solid, things can go really wrong. I've seen it.
Yeah, that's a good one. Absolutely. And the last one, Michal, 10-second answer only. What's the funding trend that needs to die?
What's the funding trend or
Funding trend that needs to die?
Okay, I was just thinking about the question before, so I'm gonna answer that.
Sure,
I hate
sure.
when B2C startups also, I spend like half an hour or 1 hour screening call with them, and their pitch deck is all about technology and features, and I don't understand why the users would even use it, why, or what's the benefit, or etc. So it's usually like very techy or B2B background founders that have this kind of pitch related, and I usually don't like it because B2C is like, okay, just get straight to the point, give me the wow moment, give me how it's going to be used, and tell me how you're gonna sell it. And the funding trend. So which funding trend should die? Good question. I don't think any funding trend should die if it basically leads to any innovation in the space. So for now, I don't like what's happening in AI avatar space, and at least for a moment. I think this space is super interesting for the future. But at the moment, the most profitable companies are anyway going into sex and gambling and this kind of stuff when it comes to AI avatars. And for now, we should stop funding it probably until our more reasonable business models are found in the space.
I think the counter to that is you see companies like Practica in the language learning space that grow to like 20 million ARR off of AI avatars. So I definitely agree that I think there's probably like use cases that will emerge. The only thing I'd add there is like super expensive inflated Series A's. We keep seeing this might be more true in the US than in Europe. I think it is. But companies are now raising Series A's that are Series B size. It's like 20 to 30 million, and they're all valued at over 80 million. And that is going to bite you in the butt. It is, because you need to grow into your valuation. And if you're not ready for it, it means you're not going to be able to raise more capital. And we're seeing that like time and time again. So that should stop. That's a market trend.
We're seeing pre-seeds at 60 million valuation as well.
That should stop even more. My assessment of that. But
I agree.
Yeah, I also just heard about a Slovenian founder who apparently raised 18 million, and I think they just got accepted in YC. So I'm not sure how that worked. I haven't seen the metrics, but it sounds weird. So yeah.
So yeah, absolutely. That's That's a fair VC look. I'm wondering what founders would say about it, especially those who kind of pitch in those kind of valuations. But guys, that was amazing. I enjoyed it a lot. Apart from all the technical chocolates we had here today, thanks for everyone for joining us, and especially Emily, Samir, Michal, Rok. You're amazing. Appreciate you sharing the insights, and everyone who is in the B2C space, building something on the seed stage, check out the Traction Builder and apply till March 26. And thank you again. Thank you. You're amazing. And thank you for sharing your insights with us. Bye bye. Cheers, everyone.
Thank you.